All right, so I'm going to show you a video that I made on March 11th that ended up being deleted, and not by me. So lately, ever since actually this year started, my social media has been hacked and things thrown in the trash, predictions thrown in the trash, and weird shit that's not written by me. And I have changed the password multiple times. I even did the two-factor authentication. I've done that. I've changed that up. So I think the issue is that I have an older computer that's just out of date, and there's too many vulnerabilities. So I got a new computer coming in, so hopefully this bullshit stops. So now that that's out of the way, I actually had texted a good friend of mine, and I let her know what was happening, and she has the email to prove that this weird shit was happening with my social media, and I even made a video about it on March 12th. So the reason why I was so upset on March 12th was because there was a pattern happening on my social media where things were being deleted, and or either thrown in the trash or just hacked altogether. Okay. Anyways, I let my friend know, so she knows about it, and I shared a little bit that on social media. So that being said, I'm going to show you the video I made on March 11th. And it has to do with these Illuminati motherfuckers, okay? And so on April 29, 2023, I put out this post at this speakeasy doll house in this Illuminati ball.com. It's like a copycat group of the Rothschilds that, want to continue this 1972 Surrealist ball. Very esoteric, probably, inappropriate debaucheries, and you know what I mean by that. And in this post back last year, April 29th, I had wrote that, did you know that we are from the sun god Ra, and that we have the power to manipulate the weather itself because we are stardust? And in this post I had wrote that this includes creating powerful hurricanes that would ruin debauchery parties in the Caribbean. These fucking people are at it again. And then I had posted me generating wind on a pinwheel and knocking the pinwheel off. All right, so the main thing is that we harness the element of wind, and then we direct it with our intent. See how I did that? So that's sort of the sum up of the post. Now it's March 11th, 2024, so that debauchery party looks like they have closed applications. Yeah. And so let's see, right? Let's go for it. The issue is that you never really want to hurt any innocent bystanders when you create such a storm, okay? So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe a tropical storm, maybe a typhoon, maybe a smaller category hurricane. Because you never want to harm the island people. It's not necessarily the natives' fault, that these fucking billionaires, these rich people, they have nothing else to do with their money but perform these debauchery parties. So we'll see. All right, so when I say that you're not separated from the elements, I really do mean that. Okay, so this is mysticism. Okay, in the East. Okay, Eastern traditions, in Hinduism and Buddhism, they know these as cities. Okay, so cities is, as you empower yourself, you become more godlike. Okay, I'm not kidding. Like, you literally have the potential of God in you. Not just me. Everybody has this potential. And it's a big reason why so many videos are made now, or I'm sorry, movies are made now with supernatural abilities, and they have to do with magic, and the East is coming over to the West, bringing their philosophy. And that reason being is because this is all possible. The human being is supposed to evolve their consciousness and become godlike. I'm just going to say this again. We are a subset of God, not the God, right? You're the creator of your own reality, but you're also a co-creator amongst other players in the game. Remember that, right? So we have to watch our ego. And I'm speaking to myself because I got a lot of fire element in me, okay, particularly of all the injustice that's going on over here, okay? So specifically what's going on with this two-party system of the judicial system. You've got one for the elite and one for the rest of us. All right? It's bullshit. So within this two-party system of the elite versus the rest of us, right? The black magic banking system, right? What are they into, man? Are they into drag? Are they into humanism? Are they into transgenderism? Are they into black magic, meaning humiliation rituals? They want to see if the vulgar or profane will sell their soul for money and fame, right? Let's go straight to the top, man, right? Let's go straight to the top, to the banks, the banking magicians. Are they into this? Well, let's take a look at these clips.
Have a chance to kind of tell some of these stories of what you saw and what transpired in this party, this Wall Street party you snuck into, and we're going to show some of the names of the people who attended this party and are part of this Wall Street fraternity, Kappa Beta Phi, and specifically the chair, billionaire Wilbur Ross. Go ahead and get right into it.
So this was a secret society of Wall Street executives that was 80 years old. It was founded in 1929, and it's a society that consists of many of the people who run the global economy, who manage billions of dollars in money at hedge funds, private equity firms, and big banks. So I heard about this, and I decided I had to at least try to go. Each year they gather for one dinner where they induct new members. Those members are required to dress up in drag, put on skits and musical acts, and basically humiliate themselves in front of the veteran members. So I rented a tuxedo and I went over to the hotel where it was being held, and I walked right in. It was amazing.
And who is Wilbur Ross? And talk about your interactions with him, because he basically offered to, in a way, bribe you with inside information, with being a source if you didn't write about this.
Wilbur Ross is a billionaire investor. He's been around Wall Street for a long time. He's very well known, and he was that year's leader of the dinner. And so I witnessed this whole thing, off-color jokes, sexist humor, jokes about the Occupy movement, things like that. And afterwards, I got outed. People found out that I was a reporter, and Wilbur Ross sort of snuck me off into the hallway and said, "Look, if you don't write about this, or if you take it easy on us, the people in this room could be very good sources for you, and I'll pick up the phone anytime you need." So he was basically, you're right, saying, I will bribe you in order to get a better treatment out of this.
And there's another main character in your piece, Michael Novogratz. Who is he, and what was your interaction with him?
Well, he was the one who outed me. So he's a billionaire hedge fund manager with Fortress Investment Group, and he was seated at my table at this dinner. And after most of the skits and things had played out, I was taking a picture with my phone, and he sort of stopped me and said, "Well, who are you?" So I identified myself. I said I'm a reporter with the New York Times, and he proceeded to sort of stand me up and say, "You're not allowed to be here," and give me your phone. He wanted to destroy the evidence. So I said, no, you can't have my phone. And he sort of got belligerent, and he was, grabbing my lapels, and it seemed like about to be physically violent with me. And that was when Wilbur Ross pulled me away and started offering to give me things in exchange for treating them fairly.
So we looked into a little bit of Novogratz' background. He's given thousands of dollars both to Democrats and Republicans, $2,400 in 2010 to Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, $2,000 in 2012 to Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. He's given several $1,000s to Democrats for Education Reform, which promotes the privatization of public education, charter schools. So a lot of these figures are giving money to both the Democrats and Republicans. And so what's your response to that?
Well, this is not a political organization, Kappa Beta Phi. It's a professional one, and everyone who works there, works on Wall Street, and they span the range from Democrats to Republicans and probably, everything in between. So I don't think, it's fair to draw conclusions about the political leanings of the group as a whole. I will say that I think that there's sort of a political class in New York made up of these wealthy Wall Street donors who tend to support both parties. They're sort of hedging their bets. Whoever tends to win, they want to be in league with, and so they, sometimes will donate to both sides of the aisle.
Right, and critics would say that that both political parties are really protecting this group's interest because of the vast donations they're giving to both.
You could say that. I think there's certainly evidence that Wall Street has undue influence in Washington. But
I am Eloise. I am 6. I'm a city child. I live at the Plaza Hotel, which is huge and wonderful and très elegant, especially at Christmas time.
All right. So why would anybody want to create this disruption and this interruption and use gray magic and create such a storm on these Caribbean Bermuda islands, right? Why would we want to use our magic, right? What happens in these islands? Well, let's watch a couple of these clips from Miss Lucas and Mr. Markman to find out exactly what kind of black magic is being done to them as children on these islands.
I went through very intensive, basically, attempts to entice, I guess. They took me to private islands in the Bahamas, showed me basically how some of the trainers were living.
Would that be like the Jeffrey Epstein Island?
Among others, yeah.
You were there,
I was there.
and he owned it at that time, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
And you came across him too, by any chance?
I did.
I've heard a lot about him privately from people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's relatively safe to name these days.
Was there anything that stood out that since that is something that people know, since someone that people know was involved with these things, is there something that you remember about him?
It's been a while since I thought about him. He was never, I didn't get that close to him personally. I would just see him around. I mean, when I was being taken to these islands, I would see all kinds of popular and famous people. About Epstein himself, he was really able to switch on a dime from, absolute murderous rage killing to just completely pleasant and affable. And his I guess his programming was more successful than mine, because he was very quick on his feet and totally changed to suit the situation always. That's probably why he was in the role that he was in. Yeah, I remember that about him. Tremendously versatile, and very good code switcher. And just really, he could deal with the high-minded and the low-minded, and just kind of bring everybody to their basis level and send them on their way to to experience whatever horrible things they might want. So, I mean, it was a well-run operation. Obviously, it wasn't just him. Like, huge numbers of people on these islands specifically, incredibly disciplined staff. Not that I'd want to use discipline for things like that, but...
No, but there's a lot of science behind it, and it's, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you mean, right?
Yeah.
That the staff is very well disciplined, like everybody knows exactly what they do, and it works.
Yeah. So I can't speak that much to him because I never had that much of his attention. It's just like sizing me up for something and then immediately on to the next person. So I can't say I was ever spending much time
So
with
that
him.
was on his island particularly, if he sized you up for something and he went immediately on to the next, that was on
Yeah.
his island.
Yeah.
This is at the time when you're a teenager and you're being enticed,
Mm-hmm.
you're being shown what you can have basically if you follow along.
I guess what what my handlers and my mother had sort of settled on by the time I was becoming a teenager was that I might be an actor. I might be. There was talk about going into some sort of comedy thing, being on Saturday Night Live, and that was appealing to me, and thought about it a little bit, and so that may have been a public role that I was being groomed for a little bit.
How interesting. It's sort of like within the network, these possibilities are all real.
Yeah.
So, do you remember getting trained? Because I do, for singing and everything.
Yeah, well, I guess I should, yeah. I was. I worked as a model as a child and an actor. I was supposed to be working as an actor from a young age, from childhood. I did actually work as a model. I was in a lot of advertisements and magazines and things.
As a child?
As a child,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Supposedly I was, I was just noticed at random in a Starbucks in downtown Manhattan, like, oh, you have a very photogenic child, like, maybe you want to have him be a model. Now I know this is sort of prearranged.
Right. That's the story.
Yeah.
That's the
but
story.
That's the story
out.
that I was supposed to tell. Like, oh, we met this nice man in the Starbucks, and it sounds very normal.
And next thing, wow, you're all over.
Yeah.
Advertising everywhere.
Yeah. So I did a lot of magazine advertisements. I did a little bit of TV. Of course, I never saw any of the money from this. It was like totally laundered away, which is infuriating.
And your mother didn't see it either.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Experience that is prepared to be part of it. It was also the same for me in the year. Again, 9 to 10 only, but discovered at age 9, and then trained for 1 year. But there was a lot of promises, so I think it's the same. The promises that were made about what my life was going to be like, it had a lot to do with wealth.
Yeah.
Had a lot to do with, the fame, of course, but the respect I was always going to get, the apartment, the best apartment in Paris, and the house on the Côte d'Azur, and the yacht. It was all told me repeatedly that I would picture, this very easy and luxurious lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was almost like I felt like I was acting when I was when I was sold to men. I was, going around with this big politician in Germany. I was acting too, but I always fully believed it in the moment. And I think that's how the dissociation, the part that I had been made into to be my persona, was going to be the sort of light and fun and sexy. I was 10, but I was that persona around him, and then I also found a lot of pleasure in there because he also really was very nice to me, and I think that was a big hook for me, that these people looked up to me, or they, because they knew that I'm going to be a star, and so they were already, so my treatment was just so much better compared to before, but I was completely dissociated, and then believing it 100% in the moment. Like what you're describing, it almost sounds like you couldn't quite fully 100% believe it, like you weren't dissociated enough.
I guess not. Thank goodness.
Exactly.
I remember being used for a lot of different gatherings, parties, like as a sex slave, and essentially as an actor, but mostly a mute one. So that was definitely the case for some of those years, pre-puberty, 10, 11. And then they started sending me to a breeding compound.
A breeding compound?
Yeah.
Okay. What is that? I can guess, but...
It's a dedicated facility for breeding human people. In my case, this was in Jalisco in Mexico.
Really?
So I'd be brought down there once I hit puberty, and I was on all sorts of steroids and aphrodisiacs and drugs, and it's a very intensive physical program that they put you through when you're slated to be a breeder. They try to induce puberty as early as possible, and they put you on different sexual enhancement drugs and different mind-numbing drugs, and it really turns you into all you can think about is sex. It's because of all the drugs that you're on and the environment that you're in. And that's the idea. If you're in a breeder role, you just basically have sex constantly, or you're raped, more properly, just every day, all day. So that was the case for me. Starting around 12 or 13.
So was that place like a lab?
I often compare it to a monastery, to be honest. It was like a satanic monastery. It had kind of a feeling of a cloister.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it was a breeding
facility. Yeah.
So there were other children like you?
Many, many other children. Yeah. And I would have to rape them, be raped by them. Mostly other young girls who had just hit puberty, but also grown women, older women, all sorts of people.
So it's a monastery where it's not random sex, but it's sex everywhere all the time.
For me, that was the experience. I think there were different roles that I didn't get to experience as much going on there, but yeah, for me it was basically that.
And it wasn't random, it was always someone looking over your shoulder and directing you?
Pretty much, yeah. If not in person in the room, then, through a camera or a two-way mirror or something.
Really?
Yeah.
I was also supposed to be, that persona that was age 9, from 9 to 10, was supposed to be a wild sex thing. So I was drugged all day long. All these different kinds of drugs, these little pills I was taking all the time. Also to just make sure that I was always constantly feeling sexual and everything. I don't know what they were. I know they were uppers. And then I was also, but as the persona, right? But then as the persona, even made to participate even in some rituals. But this is all age 9, age 10, so it's kind of really concise for me in the period that this was happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I should also say, I'm calling this a monastery pretty intentionally. It wasn't just sexual, there was a lot of ritual associated with it. And basically, to produce the sort of children that they were interested in, they believed that different forms of black magic were necessary. And so there was a lot of careful planning around that, and there was a lot of ritual involved, prayers and sacrifices and killings, all sorts of things going into this process, basically so that I would conceive what they considered desirable children.
So, and this, do you think that is a lot to do with your blood?
I think a lot of it has to do with that. Yeah, they're very interested in bloodlines. I mean, they're also just very interested in people who can survive. I mean, a lot of other people, other boys, for instance, you know, I would just see them dying, you know, from just sheer exhaustion, from stress, from all kinds of things. But I was one of the ones who was just there year after year. I was brought all over the world, and different people were brought to me also, because this breeding process is very intricate, it's very delicate. They do a tremendous amount of genealogical research. They have agents all over the globe who are looking for certain bloodlines, but also certain psychic characteristics, other kinds of, I'm not privy to everything they're looking for, obviously. But this is a very global program. And so I would sometimes, if it was deemed helpful to their plans, I'd be brought to other places, other countries, or they would bring in women and girls from outside the US to me.
And like, okay, so genealogically, you're Jewish mostly?
Mostly. Yeah, according to Ancestry.com, like 95% or 90-something percent Ashkenazi Jewish, yeah.
And so, can you talk a bit, because it's just so specific, right? We're talking about bloodlines. I mean, for a lot of people, that doesn't even mean anything at all. Like, who cares, usually? So can we just talk a little bit about that, or what you know?
Sure. Well, I'm no expert in this area, but I do have a lot of experience with people who are.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So there are different schools of black magic. This is my understanding so far. Again, I'm not interested in black magic. I don't know a ton about it. Like, I haven't really researched it on my own, but for some purposes, the Jewish bloodlines are considered essential to the process, basically. It's like you need a Jewish person to have the desired result of your spell.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure how much is superstition and how much is real. But that was definitely the case. In many cases, as I mentioned before this interview, when we were talking, they need specifically a descendant of Solomon. So apparently I qualify for that. I have enough of a direct blood relationship to the historical Solomon that they could use me for these rituals.
I mean, I've heard a lot, obviously, working with people.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a few people I can name in connection with this. Maybe not at this time, but some of them are famous or moderately famous people. One of them is a major philanthropist in the Seattle area.
Really?
Yeah.
That is connected to that program. That is to say that they have like a big role in it, or? Yeah, a major role. So the philanthropist I just mentioned
I called her the abbess. She was basically the director, as far as I could tell. I mean, of course, this is from a child's perspective, so hard to say what's really going on. But from my perspective, she was the abbess of this monastery. And basically, her word was absolute, and whatever she said went. And for me, that was usually, various forms of, just sexual functioning. I would often be chained up for sometimes days or weeks at a time, and they would just bring in women one after the other.
How dehumanizing.
Yeah. I was being held in a cell. I believe it actually was in the Bahamas somewhere. It's a very warm place. And I managed to find a way to cut myself to slit my wrists. And I was committed to it. I was like, okay, this is my only way out. And they wouldn't let me go through with it. They found me, they resuscitated me. I healed. And that was kind of when I started to realize that I actually had some power in the situation. Like, I never thought that I did before that. It was like, well, I'm gonna, I'm gonna have to yield to this at some point, because I don't have any other option. But after the suicide attempt, I was like, oh, I do have other options. Like, I do actually have some power. They're trying to get something from me that I don't actually have to give. And that was very, very empowering. And resulted in a lot more torture and attempts to erase my memory again, and a lot of electroshock. Horrible, horrible electroshocks, especially at 15. But I just wouldn't do it, I guess.
Good for you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome that you're sitting here in the healing process. And, in the beginning, I used to write a lot, and then, always a lot of therapy. And then for me, yoga and meditation. I mean, so everything is in the context of healing.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah, my healing stuff. Yeah. Well, I went to Marlborough College in Vermont. That's where I went at 17. And pretty quickly I started getting into some healing practices, some spiritual practices.
Wow.
There was a Quaker meeting in that area, a lot of Quakers in Vermont, where a bunch of students from the college would pile into the back of a pickup truck, and we'd drive over to the Quaker meeting. And that was really good. That was my first experience of group meditation, sane group meditation for actual spiritual purposes. It was so nice. Like, that was really the first time I experienced a group of people being silent together with that level of intention, and it's very beautiful. Just these little Quaker meetings in basically a converted barn in southern Vermont. So I'm grateful for those. I had a actual relationship for the first time a couple years later, and that was, with a non-cult person. That was also quite informative. And but I also started studying Zen Buddhism. I studied with different Zen teachers around the U.S. and Canada. Started getting more grounded in my meditation practice. That was pretty good. And the kind of militaristic feeling of Japanese Zen, especially Rinzai Zen.
Yeah, it is a little militaristic. Yeah.
That was very familiar to me. It's like, oh, okay, like discipline bordering on sadism, like, got it. So, and there are also some more esoteric aspects to this that have to do with raising your spiritual vibration. So that's the other aspect of it. So it wasn't just that they couldn't use me as a trainer, although that was obviously the main practical concern. But my more sensitive handlers were also making me aware, not intentionally, but I haven't really touched on this yet, but there's a whole psychic battle that goes along with the physical battle.
Of course.
Yeah. and it just plays into how I got out. So I guess it's time to mention it. So it came to my attention essentially that my core vibration, my soul signature, was raising to a point where they couldn't harness it anymore. So I still am wondering kind of what that means in practice. I hear, I talk about raising your vibration in a spiritual context.
I'm glad you wonder.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's on everyone's lips today,
Yeah.
Raising our vibration is like, okay, let's like not bypass now. Let's like look at who you are, what you do.
Well, apparently this is a real thing. It's real enough that my handlers perceived it and cared about it deeply. The core of it seems to be moving from fear-based experience to love-based experience.
Well, you realized you had power to say no.
Yeah.
And the battle that began then, that must match on a spiritual level too.
Yeah, that's true. A lot more of my spirit entered my body after the suicide attempt. A lot more, actually. I became a lot more myself. I became aware that I had a massive existence beyond the life that I had known up to that point. I became aware of a lot of spiritual information, a lot of past lives and future lives. I was much more in touch with my guides after that. I mean, a lot of people say this after a near-death experience. It's almost universal.
I had one too.
Yeah. But just to validate that again.
Yeah, that you just, well, it depends on each person again, but so it seems like for you it was extremely revelatory on a spiritual level. And
it was, because after that, I mean, I never left myself in the same way after that. Like, no matter what happened, I mean, I left my body, obviously, because I was being horribly tortured still. But I was able to stay with myself in a spiritual sense and kind of witness what was happening even after I would leave my body. And that also was, a tremendous revelation, as you say. Kind of helped me get a hold of myself on some deeper levels.
But I know what you mean, because the overcoming the fear, isn't that the task of all humanity?
Yeah.
To align with love and overcome fear? Isn't this the dual realm here that has basically fear on one side, love on the other side, and we're just all in between? And isn't it our task, really? Isn't that a spiritual, what we're here to do, ultimately?
Yes, this is the task of all humans.
And that doesn't mean not to be cautious, but it does mean to overcome fear.
There has to be a force which is greater than the forces that abused us, Yeah. It doesn't have to be explicitly spiritual, although it is definitely for me. It can be just creative. I mean, even before I could bear to talk about spirituality, I feel like I've done that also kind of in stages. Like, it's taken some time for me to acknowledge myself as a spiritual person. But like before that, I would just say, I believe in creativity. I believe in creative force, It can be pretty agnostic. Like, it doesn't have to be.
Absolutely. Because it's about experience more than about belief.
Yeah. But the point is that whatever you're putting your faith in is more powerful than the cult network. That's kind of the big thing.
Yeah. And then you have to believe that there is something greater, and you had that through your suicide, your suicide attempt when you went to the other side and had that near-death experience.
Yeah, this is true.
Amazing.
So now we have an idea of what goes out in the Caribbeans regarding black magic and how they use sex magic and breeding programs to abuse all of those kids out there in the Caribbeans. And of course, the mainstream media, that's all bought and paid for, is never going to report on it. And of course, the alphabet federal law enforcement ain't going to do shit about it because they're also compromised, or if not a part of the problem. So what can you do, right? How can you use magic and this is called gray magic, to disrupt and interrupt this crazy shit that is going on in the Caribbean. Well, you can, and I'm telling you, you have the power to manipulate reality itself. That includes the weather, because you are not separate from the weather. You have the God spark of divinity within yourself. Okay? And so you can utilize that to disrupt and interrupt these debauchery parties. Okay, so now we need to prove this stuff, right? About manipulating the elements themselves. Okay. So the next portions of the videos, you're gonna see me talking about the power of meditation, the time frame that I taped myself in meditation. Okay, so you'll see the screen video of that, and then you'll see upper left corner how that aligns, that meditation aligns with the development of a weather anomaly that weatherman has never seen in all the years of him doing the weather, specifically him living out in the Caribbean, in the Bahamas, that he had never seen anything like that in that time frame, that time of year, because it's not hurricane season at all. April is not supposed to have any kind of strong anomalies that the weatherman has seen. And so let's look at the science of this, right? When is the typical hurricane, cyclone, tropical storm season happen in the Caribbean? So it looks like that's going to be on June 1st through November 30th, right? Okay. Now that being said, any kind of anomaly that looks like a formation of an organized cyclical cycle formation of a strong hurricane storm that is forming with the high pressure system above it, pushing it down towards the islands, would be completely bizarre, would be completely out of season, would be completely unheard of, according to this weatherman.
What is that? We'll talk about it. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
Now let's talk about the power of meditation, okay? And so the next portion of the video, you're gonna see me talk about me utilizing meditation. I was in meditation all day long, okay? All day long. And I even have a video on that, okay? And I was in deep meditation, and I know that there's a debauchery party that's gonna happen that weekend, supposedly. Now, there's no saying that they may have rescheduled it. There's no saying that other misfortunes may have happened to these entities, okay? Like this. It's called gray magic, okay? We're not stepping into the black magic. We're using gray magic. Now you know what gray magic is. So white magic, what do? We heal, protect, and resurrect. Okay. So on April 19th, I get into deep meditation. I'm meditating all day, baby. I even throw a little video, and I'll show you that video. Okay.
All right, top left corner, it is the 18th. And then we got here, create storm in Caribbean. Been working on this a little bit. I don't want to go too hardcore. Just enough to ruin the party if possible. Okay. We'll see what we can create. What we're doing here is we're increasing the probability. of rain. Okay. So Friday they've got a 35% chance, and then it dropping. So we're going to increase this, and this is just one island, by the way. That's this island out here. So we'll focus on the island to disrupt, okay? Let's see if we can get a weekly. So they've got 30%, 37%, 49%. Again, that is the one out here.
Blow up of clouds and some opportunity for some rain right now in portions of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. It's a little bit more spotty on this Friday, but again, we've had some river flooding on the western side of Puerto Rico and the potential for enough rain over the next few days for at least some isolated flooding, some landslides, some mudslides are all still a possibility. Now, again, the heavy...
All right, so we did some work here on these islands here, okay. Keyword Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands. All right, remember everything hidden in plain sight. We see here to the left, Sunday, 9:55 a.m. We had a lot of rain yesterday as well. All right, so as we see here, we've got a pretty severe storm. Worked on it the last week. And we also have a warning of a flash flood in this particular area here.
And then I'm going to show you the formation, okay, of the hurricane getting ready to project on the islands, okay? And it's an anomaly the weatherman hasn't seen in 30 years, I think he says. And I might misquote the guy, but it's been like since as long as he's seen it, he says he's never seen an anomaly like that happen in mid-April.
What is that? We'll talk about it. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now. I showed you going on in the Atlantic. Now, this is the system that pulled away from the Greater Antilles over the last couple of days. Now, what's very interesting about this is, first of all, and let me just make sure I loop this up correctly here over the next 5 days. The first thing is, the last time I was on, we talked about how this had a little bit of rotation to it, how there was some vorticity, okay? But the fact that this is going to slam on the brakes and try and work its way back south and west is extremely unusual for late April. There is a ridge of high pressure trying to build into the north, but the fact that this holds together, and it's not just in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, because obviously when you're talking about, you know, the tropics and the Atlantic, you got to have a warm chord system, and there's got to be circulation at the bottom, right, at the surface. Now, the circulation at the surface is not crazy strong, but take a look at this. This is 100-meter winds, okay? So winds about 300 feet up, 100 meters high in the atmosphere. And you can still very clearly see this rotation, this spin, gusty winds. Now, if there's a good piece of news, I'm showing you the next 5 days where it slams on the brakes in the middle of the Atlantic and then pushes back south and west. The good news is, and I'm going to absolutely show you guys this, when I extend this out another, let's say, 3 days, and it might take a second for the model to load on days 6, 7, and 8, so bear with me, we do begin to see this fizzle out, okay? So, again, this is nothing to concern yourself with except for the fact that this is extremely unusual for late April to already see this system try and come back from west to east. Typically, we'd still have our mid-latitude cyclones, our cold chord systems in the central and the northern Atlantic especially, coming off of the east coast of the United States. But the fact that we have one that's trying to slam on the brakes, still stay somewhat wrapped up, and then actually try and push back closer to our area is very unusual. It's going to be a big, broad area of wind that could eventually hit Bermuda. But again, is it going to become tropical? No. Is it going to directly impact our area? No, but it is a crazy unusual feature for this time of the year to see that in the open waters of the Atlantic. One reason why it might be suppressed a little bit is, again, it'll be on the south side impinged with the Saharan dust layer, and that's one of the things at places like Trinidad and Tobago, and a lot of the Windward and Leeward Islands is dealing with right now. We're starting to get more haze developing to go along with some of that heavier rain. So it's crazy. And again, we can take a look at here, and let me just get back over to the next 5 days. We don't want to go too far out in the rain here, but by the way, as I'm doing this, again, thank you for clicking the like button. If you haven't subscribed to Media Mundo, I got you covered. This is no hype forecast, but it's just very unusual. And you can clearly see at the surface here on the model this very broad span. You can almost see banding features. Again, it's not wrapping up into anything, but I've been doing this for a long time, guys. Growing up in Florida, tropical weather, and this is something that I would not expect to see in late April. So there you go. So.
Okay? That's all me. That's all me. And this is not to brag about it or anything like that, but when I post something on Facebook a year prior warning the Illuminati that I will create a fucking hurricane to disrupt their debauchery parties, I mean it. Okay? So I'll show you the video, and then I want you to pay attention to the upper left corner of his weather meteorology and when it starts to form on that 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, that whole entire weekend, all the way up into Monday.
All right, so we've already heard him talk, but what I want you to focus on is this time frame up here, 419. All right, that's when the meditation went really intense and when the formation had hit, started forming the vortex rotation, okay? And as this time frame goes, I just really want you to focus on that. Okay, when he starts talking, we've already heard him talk, and I'll zoom in on that time. Okay, he's got on a loop 19, 20, 21, 22, 23.
Okay, he talks about he had never seen anything like it. The weirdest anomaly is not supposed to happen in mid-April. Okay, now let me tell you what happened on my end. I had already told you the video that, hey, maybe I better be careful with this power because I don't want to hurt the natives. Okay, which is true. All right, because in meditation, that like Saturday, Sunday, I was really working hard, forming on it, and this and the inner voice, the intuition says, "Hey, Leroy, let go of the formation of the hurricane. Okay, let go of it, and just focus on high rain, heavy rain, precipitation. Just focus on that on those islands." Okay, and I did that. But in my mind's eye, in the meditation, I was forming Okay, the anomaly the weatherman is talking about that he has never seen. All right. So just think about what are the odds and the chance. Just think probability, right? Because we live in a probabilistic reality. Like, what would be the probability of some guy on Facebook, right? Some unknown magician on Facebook saying all kinds of crazy shit, right? That turns out to be manifesting itself, right? Predictions, weather manipulation, battles in the non-physical, right? They manifest themselves. That means that they materialize into our 3D existence. What's the probability, man, of this magician a year ago, okay, on April 29th, saying that this includes creating a hurricane that would ruin your fucking debauchery parties, right? So what are the odds, probability-wise, of a storm that's being generated that weekend? Okay, in that cyclical rotation and holding form, and the high pressure above that pushes it down towards the islands on that weekend, and then dissipates. Like, what? Think about that. What is the probability of that happening if not done by a magician? Because that's not necessarily going to happen naturally, is my point. This is being influenced. This is being manipulated. The probability of that happening is so rare that even the weatherman is shocked. He's never seen anything like it. And more so, what's the chance of a magician saying that that will manifest on that weekend if they continue these debauchery parties? What's the probability, man? Right? Now, let me explain something. It takes about a week to build. And depending on how much focus and how much time you have and how good of an altered state of consciousness, deep in meditation you're in, it takes about a half a week to dissipate. So a week to build, I talk about this in the video. So you'll see 2 videos, Thursday and Sunday, of me working on the probability and me talking about, well, maybe I shouldn't make this so big because I've already explained that. You don't want to hurt the native islanders, okay? But you're trying to prove a point here that you can create it, which it got created, it formed, it held together. The high pressure on top pushed it down. That's not normal, okay? This is being influenced. And then it dissipates around Tuesday or Wednesday. So it takes about a week to build and then about a half a week to dissipate it, depending on how powerful you are, depending on how focused you are, depending on how good you can get into that altered state of consciousness in meditation. Plus, there's other power-ups, okay, that I'll be teaching. And I want to make myself clear. I'm not here to destroy. I'm here to create. So in this 12,000-year cyclical cycle that we're going through, I intend to teach people how to dissipate strong storms, manipulate the weather so it's not so potent and overbearing and overpowerful to the lands in which they live in. Okay? So you have the power of God in you. And remember that God gives us all power. He says, here, child, how will you use it, right? So you don't want to abuse it. And it is why I focused on making the right decision and dissipating it. Okay, and just focus on the heavy rain. All right, because these kind of things that are going on in the Caribbean have to stop.